Dr. Barra O'Donovan is a lecturer in the Department of Archaeology based in University College Cork. His area of research within archaeology is bioarchaeology, which uses human skeletal remains as the basic database. He is also director of the Spike Island Archaeological Project, which is a project that's excavating the fort complex and in particular the convict prison that operated on Spike Island from 1847 to 1883.
The Spike Island Archaeological Project is based at the Department of Archaeology in UCC, but we have outside partners. In the first instance, we have Cork County Council, which has given us access to the site. Most of our funding, direct funding, comes from the Institute for Field Research. This is a Los Angeles-based organization that facilitates students to go on archaeological field schools. This is where they will learn archaeological excavation techniques and archaeological analyses and so on in a college environment where they will also get college credit for that. I'm interested in this particular slice of time from 1847 to 1883 because this is when the convict prison operated on Spike Island. But my interest is a bit broader than this particular location. I'm interested in institutions that were designed to contain people, whether those are hospitals, prisons, workhouses. And I'm interested in as an archaeologist, I'm interested in the material culture, the materiality of these locations, but I'm also interested on the daily lived experience for the inmates of these locations. I'm also interested in the impact on these people's lives of life in these institutions. Spike Island Archaeological Project focuses particularly on just a 36-year period of time, 1847 to 1883. Of course, Spike Island, from an archaeological perspective, probably has at least 10,000 years or up to 10,000 years of human activity. But our particular project focuses on just 36 years in the late 19th century. There is evidence of occupation and habitation around Cork Harbour going right back to the initial colonisation of the island of Ireland in the post-glacial period by Mesolithic people. So we're going right back to hunter-gatherers who lived here 7,000 BC, probably at least. And even though there isn't direct evidence of habitation on Spike Island from that period, it's probably likely that people have been there right from that period forward. What happened at Spike Island was that the island was redeveloped in the early 19th century, and much of the groundworks that were done at that period probably obliterated early evidence of earlier activity. But we know, for example, historically, that the island was the location of a church site related to an early medieval monastery on the mainland. We know also historically that there was a tower on the island before the huge groundworks that were carried out in the early 19th century. So you could imagine that there would be a situation where there was evidence of human occupation going back thousands of years on this island. And some of that evidence may still be there.
An aerial laser survey of Spike Island was commissioned by Cork County Council, and this is being used to identify the archaeological remains on the island.
Our main focus is on the prison that operated there in the mid to late 19th century, but a century after the prison we're interested in was closed down, the island was used as a prison again, and that prison, the 20th century prison, closed in 2004. Now, there's still lots of material remains associated with that prison. So we did a small social history project of recording the material culture associated with the 20th century prison, almost as a proxy for looking at the materiality of the 19th century prisoners. One of our points of departure in terms of this archaeological project has been to look at the historical documents that we have, and we have a very rich historical documentation on the prison really tells us about the operation of the prison from the perspective of the authorities running it. So what we wanted to get was an insight into the daily lives of the ordinary convict in that period, 1847 to 1883. And what we know historically is that the prison changed during that period from a very overcrowded and dangerous place in terms of disease to a less overcrowded and less dangerous place as time went on. So what we wanted to see was, could we see material culture and perhaps skeletal remains that would corroborate that story and maybe give us further insights into these people's daily lives. So certainly from what we have seen in terms of the human skeletal remains, we have the remains of a number of prisoners where we can see things, for example, we have evidence that they were buried in coffins, that they were buried in their prison uniforms, which is kind of interesting, that their prison identity continued on in death, that they were buried with their badges of religious affiliation. Religion was seen as a very important aspect of the prison by the authorities as well as seemingly by the prisoners, in the sense that one of the I suppose overall questions that we're asking is what was prison for? Why were people treated in this way? And what we can see are changes through time where you go for, say, retribution, for punishment, towards reformation, if you like, towards reforming the individual. And we see in the historical records changes in attitudes where, for example, the teacher who worked at Spike Island early on said that through religion, but also through work and discipline, these men could be reformed. 15 or 16 years later, that teacher saying it's only religion that will work. And we can see some of these men buried with for example, we found two examples of what are called brown scapulars. These are religious objects that are worn on the body and that are seen to guarantee the wearer a place in paradise, if you like, if they're wearing this at the time of their death. So it's almost like a hope, a kind of poignant sign of the hope of the prisoner, but also maybe we could see it as a kind of an insurance policy for somebody who might have felt that maybe they had transgressed at some time on this world, and this was their insurance to make sure they got to the next.
Coming up in episode 2, we look at why the fort was constructed.